Hello and welcome to a brand new show right here on TMPT and HMG. I am your host, JP John Poz, and this is Developmental. Of course, joining me is the hacker himself, the OVW legend, Bin Hamin. Bin, welcome back in.
Hey, man, good to be back with you, Poz. I'm excited for this show. I got to hop on Rip Rogers FR podcast yesterday, and it really got me going talking to Dr. Ted and Rip and just getting some of the – I actually went back to our PW 101 conversation about the lockup, the collar and elbow tie up, and had an awesome just let Rip go, just let him go. But we got one of my favorite sons of Rip, one of the greatest creative minds I've ever been able to work with in this business, man. And I was glad to cut my teeth and have this guy lead me in the ring and help develop me that way, as well as to be able to hang and call him one of my best friends in the business, man, for a few years, my writing partner. It's Adam Revolver. He's a phenomenal in-ring technician, probably the best technical wrestler I could name off the top of my head. His mind is very analytical, and at the same time, he turns around and has to play a stupid redneck when he's one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever been able to collaborate with. So I'm glad to have him here on Developmental. Power, how's it going, man? Good to see you, buddy.
It's going well, and that is the best introduction I've ever had. So,
well, it's a shoot, man.
Coming to the ring from now on.
Well, you've changed your stripes there a couple times to go from you were the original elite before the elite. Him and Man Beast were like, all right, we've been doing the redneck thing for a long time. Let's do that. And and then, you go back and forth with mobile homers for nostalgia or the payday or whatever it calls for, depending on what you're doing. But you've pretty much been, the Southern hero, I guess, below the Mason-Dixon line to a lot of those people there. And you do anything from comedy to the vicious stuff as well. And writing the shows, we got to, really cut our teeth together doing Derby City Wrestling, which is an interesting part, Poz, of the developmental system, because Rip had so many non-contract guys and he wanted to get them ready for TV that they could only get bit parts on OVW TV while training. He brought Man Beast, Twinkle Toes Martin Evans from BBC, who was kind of there for 6 months at a time, myself and Revolver here together. And Rip kind of booked the first 22 episodes on the fly just to get us, and then he just gave it to us. And we wrote 50 episodes of TV and another 50 of OVW together, and he's got hundreds or more under his belt. But Power, tell me about your time and how it's been through all the chapters since when you got there to where it is now.
Oh, man. So it's been so many eras. We went through I think when we were there, it was WWE Developmental at the time. And then they
got there 2005.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not good with years. All this stuff kind of blurs.
I got there 2006, and you were already Rip's guy, so you already had to be training your ass off for a year.
Yeah, and so I guess I got my start with the amateur shows where Rip let me start to just put those together, and those were very simple cards, putting this together. And then we moved up to, let's see, after WWE left, there was a group that was writing over us for OVW while we were doing Derby City for a little while.
Mm-hmm. That was Roadkill. I had the book at that time. Amish Roadkill.
More than him too, right? There was Conway. Yeah, there was quite a few. So we got to watch them do their thing. And then after they stepped away, eventually it was myself stepping in. I think Ali was there for a little bit running.
Yeah, that was after I had left. Kind of Ali was next in line to step up and be the vet.
Some of it does run together in my head, but you have to help me remember. I believe then after that, Al came back maybe, and TNA was there.
Yeah, well, you had Cornette come back too. Like after I left, there was another little stint with Cornette in there, wasn't it?
Yeah, I worked with Cornette for a while. And that was interesting because Cornette has been one of the most awesome people to ever work with. I know he has a persona on, that's well known for a temper and for, not being very patient. But the reality is he was one of the most patient people with me, as well as Al. Al's very much a mentor. So, learning from those guys has just been phenomenal.
Yeah, can we dig into that? So right out of the gate, that's easy for us to reminisce, but Danny Davis, the owner of OVW, you're going to learn by screwing up and getting chewed out, and then he'll bring you aside and tell you what's what. Al Snow, where we're in there with the contract people. I mean, here's Ryback, CM Punk, Cody, Sean, Spears, yada, yada, guys you're seeing every week now. And we watch them do it wrong, and then Al gets hot and cuts the promo on business and then tells them how to do the business the right way, where he has to go write a whole other week's TV to fix things. Then we train under Rip. That's a whole different look from, Rip training us how to work as opposed to doing business for TV. Then Cornette. Now, what is the experience difference between that's beyond a wrestling education right there. That's a doctorate degree, learning directly underneath those guys. And for every one of those guys, you were the right-hand man to be executing the plan on every one of those. What are the differences that you picked up from all of them, man?
Well, I was very new when Cornette came in. I was writing the show, and I've even gone back and looked at some of the formats, and I can kind of cringe at the way we laid out pre-tapes and the flow of the show and things like that. Hold on, I'm on my phone, so now I got a spammer calling in. Boom, got rid of him. All right, so I remember the day that I met Cornette. I was writing the show. Paradise was part of the product. You remember Jimmy?
That's Jimmy Long, you guys, who was, if you listen to Light the Fuse on Hamin Media Group, is Chris Silvio, who works at Seidel Dojo. They were tag team partners, totally awesome. But Jimmy's a brilliant creative as well as a great wrestler in ring, no doubt about it. But he got his chops. You've heard me talk about Paradise on our NXT shows, and a lot of the things that you see that are cinematic and very well done, from like the Undertaker stuff and the Matt Hardy retread stuff. Well, the original Matt, all the Matt Hardy stuff, the Broken Universe, all that was Matt and Paradise and Jimmy Long and damn it, what's his name? Forgive me. He's the workhorse of Impact and TNA. He got hired by WWE too.
Jeremy
Borash. Thank you. Forget it, I was blanking there. But go ahead. Sorry, with Paradise.
Okay, so yeah, and wrestling's more woke now, so we don't use gay gimmicks to get heat. But he was doing a gimmick of that sort. That's what Paradise was. He had a female manager, Josie. She's very talented as well. And so the idea I remember is that we were going to try to be outlandish. We were going to put the women's title on Paradise. And so we had written in for Paradise to win the women's title in a way where, he was going to come into the situation. I think it was CJ Lane was the women's champion at the time. And we were going to have the female do the bumping because we were at least smart enough not to have a guy bump a girl and cover her. But then we were going to have, the female would be bumped by a female and then have Paradise make the cover and have Josie bully the referee into making the 3 count and then hand the title over to Paradise. And there was going to be heat in our minds. And that was the day that Jim Cornette was taking over OVW. I had never met him before. And Danny messaged me earlier in the day and said, Jimmy is going to be here tonight. He saw the show and he wants to talk to you. So, of course, I am just horrified. All I can remember is just, the stories from the internet about, he has trouble
slapping Santino. Yeah.
Yeah, if you mess up his drive-through order, that was not something you wanted to mess with. So, putting the women's title on a dude, I just knew my head was going to get cut off. And when I came into Danny's office, Danny was, of course, giving me the eye of he was giving me a hard time, ready to give me a hard time, of course. And then when I went in there, Jim Cornette said, he said, "Tell me about this women's title." And so I laid it out and I explained it. And I just knew that this was my last day. And he kind of just laughed and then he corrected it. He explained, you don't do it that way. You're making the company get heat by having the ref count. Instead, he explained to have the, of course, the female bump the female. And then whenever Paradise makes the cover, have Josie make the 3 count and then take the belt and give it to him. And now the company's not in on it. Now they've stolen the belt. Now they have heat. And he just made it better. And we went out and we did that and it worked. And so Jim Cornette for me has always been a guy that I could always just take my ideas and just give it to him, and then he could grind it or turn it into something much better. So that was my first time meeting Jim Cornette, was putting the women's title on a dude.
That's a great story, man. What a great soundbite that is right there, Poz. We're gonna have to maybe cut that and give that away for free. Tag Corny on that, buddy. Wow. And that I'm jealous of you. I mean, I'm jealous of your in-ring skill and the way your mind works a lot of times. But Cornette and I have always been two ships passing in the night. He was there, and then I came down and was just gone off the Santino stuff. We did that whole time together. Soon as I leave, he comes back, and I would love to have the mentorship, because if we're carrying the torch for Rip, it's pretty much an identical view on wrestling. You know what I mean? So I would love to have the punch-ups on our stuff from that time, from those times too. What about Al, man? How about what, you know, you've worked with Al for a lot of years in a lot of different ways.
And I work with Al currently. So I've probably spent most of my time working with Al. And Al is a guy that is a mentor and a friend. So the best thing about my relationship with Al is that, you know, there could be a trap where people are in awe of a guy who has been so successful in the business that you become a yes man. But Al is comfortable enough with me that he lets me just speak my mind. So sometimes we butt heads, but ultimately it allows me to get an opinion out, and then he'll correct me. Even if by the end of the conversation, I still think that I may be right or not, I have enough respect for Al, and Al has enough respect for my opinion that he lets me speak freely in any kind of creative situation. So that's what I really love about working with Al. And I've learned so much from him. He's a guy who's always, you know, driving towards the why. Why is something happening in a match? And that's very important. And that's missing from today. You know, we don't want to just have a show full of a bunch of false finishes. That becomes very exhausting. So he's you know, helped me understand about structuring a show and building it. The first match to the last match is in itself kind of like a match. You know, you can't. The first match should go straight into a finish. You shouldn't have a bunch of false finishes. No, you know, and you learn this from Cornette as well. You know, no fighting outside of the ring prior to, say, a falls count anywhere match, and just little things like that you can log into your brain and just carry with you. So, you know, at this point, I think, and when we were on episode 1139, we just did last night at OVW.
And let me time out. This guy was here because we were at episode 500 together, and I think I started around 427. So you were probably in the early 390s.
Yeah,
you've been there for over 700 consecutive weekly episodes of television.
And that's just the weekly episodes. We do Saturday night specials once a month.
Sure.
It's 12 more per year. And then there's countless live events. We're up to 2 to 3 live events a weekend. And then when you were there, we were doing as many as 3 or 4 at that time.
Well, yeah, we would have TV for OVW and DCW Wednesday, Thursday, and we'd have practice twice a week, and we'd have maybe Friday, Saturday shows, and then, you know, never know, maybe a Sunday or something. There was a couple weeks we had like 5 things a week going on, man. It was crazy. I mean, it was exactly what we were there for, the beautiful time. Poz, why don't you get in with something, man? I don't want you to just have to sit there. This is the 2-man power trip right here.
So 15 years in OVW. I mean, that's amazing. 8-time tag champ, 7-time TV champ, 2-time world champ. What was it like getting in the door, though? Is Rip already there? Danny Davis is there? Like, when you first get in the door, who's there? Who's your trainer?
I just moved to OVW without speaking to anyone, or moved to Louisville without speaking to anyone. I had a map quest and find it. I missed the building a few times because, you know, it's a warehouse that we converted into a TV studio.
Right.
It's actually very nice. It's one of the nicest facilities of independent wrestling. So the day I showed up, my first day, I just showed up and I walked in on the contract class, and Lance Storm was there to quickly intercept me and walk me off to the side and show me to Mike Mondo. I'm sure Lance doesn't remember. Time I met him for 5 seconds. He was a cool guy for that moment. But Mike Mondo was there, so he signed me up. That was my beginning class instructor. So showing up for that, it was about a 3-month class, and then I was moved right into Rip's class. And within about 9 months, I had my first Broadway under Rip. You just show up regularly. I think Rip appreciates hard work. He is a coach through and through, you know, and he appreciates a guy who is, who is there first and leaves last. And at the same time, Rip was offering bonus classes. So you could pay him a little extra and he would come in on 7 a.m. on a day, and it would be a class of just 4 guys. And you would go for 2 hours with 4 guys. And, I can't even count the Broadways I've done under Rip, maybe 9 or 10 total.
Yeah. Let me just stop you right there, because this is where I'm on so many shows and things line up, and I really need to this. The improv mind here power is me closing a loop right here. So from what I've done this week and how Rip beams when he thinks about you and Man Beast, you two, I mean, along with Jamin and Serena and plenty of others, but you and Man Beast specifically are his like freak test subjects. 2 guys who haven't been up high up at the top of the top drawn at WWE, but can do something that no one else on the planet can really do. And when people say they want Broadway, they think a half hour. Rip has this guy go 90 minutes in front of like an ROH camp, bro, to like show how it's done completely. And then these tapes are getting sent out where people are like, damn, that's what they're doing, and they don't want to put over what Rip can really teach. And when I say maybe a Conway and a Dinsmore can do it too, along with a couple others, but no one can do it like Ted McNailer and his tag team partner Adam Revolver right here. So that's one of the biggest kept secrets in like of how to really do it. When guys say protect this business, like you can get the shirt, 2-man power trip, prowrestlingtees.com, protect this business. This is one of the gatekeepers of knowing how to do a 90-minute Broadway to pass it down. And he's done it how many times, Power? How many times?
One 90-minute,
yeah.
60 minutes. And then there was an opportunity, because those are closed door opportunities, but in front of a live audience in Campbellsville, Kentucky, Man Beast and myself were able to go 1 hour with Totally Awesome, which was Susio and Paradise. So that in itself, and at the end of that, with the crowd chanting for 5 more minutes, that was awesome.
and you are a tag team specialist. However, you do it singles as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So tag team is probably my forte, I would say. You can put me with just about anybody, and I can just go back in my mind and remember some spots that Man Beast and I have put together. So, it's like plug and play in some cases. And I love Man Beast's mind because he's so creative and outside the box that, like, where I get very serious and nuts and bolts about something, he'll become very abstract, and then he'll have something that's, a comedy spot that's just genius in some ways. And you can't underestimate comedy, because when you're on the lower levels of wrestling, when you're not WWE, AEW, which is very serious kind of wrestling, you're probably wrestling at a fair occasionally. And if you try to show up and have a WrestleMania moment at a fair, you're doing it wrong. And that's a mistake I made in front of Cornette. We had a bought show at a Harley Davidson store. And so out on a very hot July day in a parking lot that was a pretty good draw, we tried to have a very serious wrestling match, and it fell flat. And so we learned that's the place where you do the ha-ha. So, don't underestimate those spots. Don't do them on TV, but, you always want to have those for the little kids at those kinds of shows. And that makes up a lot of your money. If I get an opportunity to be on a fair show, it's a bebetter payday and an easy night.
The bought show or the paid show? Just explain the bought paid show, just because that's something people just throw out there, and I don't know if everybody knows exactly what that means.
So in independent wrestling, you can either try to draw a crowd, which I think is very difficult, or you can sell a show. And drawing a crowd says, I'm going to put this guy at the top of the card. We're going to advertise, promote, sell tickets individually to the people who show up. And then we're going to try to make a profit that way. And you can sell sponsorships, and it's very intensive on that level of trying to get people to the show and then deliver a good show. A bought show is where something like a fair or a festival says, look, we want to pay a certain amount of money for you to bring your product in, and now you don't have to worry about selling tickets. You definitely want to deliver a good product, but you do not necessarily have to sweat whether or not that guy at the very top is going to draw enough people for you to make your bottom line. So a bought show to me is something that if you can get one of those as a promoter, that's I won't say easy cash, but it's guaranteed money. So you definitely want that.
Gotcha.
Shit, where was I going to go? I just drew up a blank. Oh, I was going to say, you mentioned comedy, and that you sometimes you're in the serious fight in a tag team, but then a lot of times you've done a lot of comedy, and here's where I put myself over. You and I writing together for a good 2 years. I feel like bringing the Chicago improv style to your mind, and I mean, you just absorb information and apply it in your own way. You always have, no matter who it was, that you were working with. Do you still use any of that in kind of your formats or the way you look at things to come up with new spots?
Yes, and absolutely. That is something that still sticks with me. So the rule of improv is, as you know, Pops, is yes and.
Yeah.
The thing that you want to always, like build off of something, never shut down another idea, keep it building. So that's definitely something that I like, and it helps with continuity. So there's no gaps or plot holes, so to speak. Yeah, the improv experience it keeps you on your toes. Being in front of a live audience without knowing where you're going next, but having someone there to throw you a lifeline. It can build a relationship with the person that you're in the ring with or on the stage with, and it just delivers a better product. You get genuine emotion and reactions in those situations. So, yeah, to this day, yes and plays a role when you do a backstage pre-tape, or if you're on the microphone and maybe something goes awry, you can always get it back on point, because if you know you're in point, yes and gets you back there.
I love that power. And for those who don't know, he's talking about yes and, not just saying it in a conversation, but saying yes and to a game. Like when we find what the game is between us, and we're ping-ponging that response back and forth. They can sound negative and positive, but we're just saying yes to each other's ideas. So man, that really makes me feel good that in our time together, we did some crazy stuff, because we had one of my favorite things that you would say is we got 3 lifeguards and we got 33 people drowning. Who are we going to save right now? Like, because this guy is also was a collegiate swimmer too. He's definitely got the stamina to go 60 minutes, no problem. Like when it comes to discipline in the gym and training, this guy was born with it, or is instilled with it, plus his analytical lawyer mind as well. So,
and going to the 3 lifeguards and everybody's drowning, what people may not know is that what makes OVW very different from a lot of other independent wrestling companies is when you show up at an independent wrestling company, typically it's a once a month show or once every 2 months kind of thing. And guys show up and they all want to steal the show. They all want to have that 5-star wrestling match. And no one is there to like build an overall show. Showing up 2-hour drive just to really put a guy over strong, that hurts people's egos. At another independent wrestling show, I describe it as at another indie show, and maybe there's nothing wrong with it, but people show up, it's their one time that month there. They're trying to take as much of the pie as they can, grab as big a slice as possible. At OVW, we're there 3-4 times a week, and we're trying to build an audience in the same house over and over. Instead of just trying to grab the biggest slice, we're actually bringing something to the table. So, we're trying to build a meal or build a thing that is bigger than us. And at OVW, we have a lot of guys that are new. We're a school first and foremost, where we have brought in people who have 1 year, 1.5, 2 years experience, or no experience. And then we're trying to put them on television. So that's where we always came up with the lifeguards and people drowning, is because you didn't get the well-polished 5 to 10 year veteran, or if you did, you had one of them. You didn't have a roster full of them like you can at a very high level like AEW or WWE. So, taking a lot of people who are green and inexperienced and being able to put them out there and give them opportunities to grow, and to still at the same time give the audience something that's not just community theater, that's a little bit better than that. So that's what we are at OVW.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I mean, one of the things I'm most proud of in my career, and I'm sure you look back on it, I'm sure, and I'd like to hear what else that you've written that you look back on, you're like, yeah, that was a good milestone for me, is the creation of Lumpy Magoo. Like a guy who didn't have to do anything, and who's one of the biggest myths in wrestling. Like he never happened because nobody can find him in Idaho or Iowa, wherever he moved back to. But what we did, and you can go on my YouTube Ben Hamin channel and just type in Lumpy Magoo, and you'll find out what I'm talking about. But with next to nothing, and with interviews and a character voice, and that's the thing when you don't know how to wrestle. Well, we can try and teach you character. Is it going to click? And if it does, you can get on TV while you're learning to wrestle, and we'll protect you up to that point. But man, I just remember because of the student shows, and Revolver would be the one who would have to take all the money. You'd have to sell 5 tickets to get on the amateur show, right? So you'd be in the match or whatever. And if you sold, whoever sold the most might be in the main event, but you still got to give Rip his money, and Revolver would have to take it and check guys off the list. But by the end of how good the creative that Power and I came up with, and Man Beast as well, for Lumpy Magoo, nobody could sell any tickets anymore because we were drawing about 2/3 to a full house sometimes on the big payoff shows. But because everybody wanted to buy their tickets from Lumpy, so he'd be in the main event all the time because the character was that over, and he never even had to wrestle. Like everything he did was like bend over, time. It was a nerd character. Tie my shoes, back body drop a guy, and freak out like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." What have you? Turn and get the attention and bump the guy's head. It was all Three Stooges misdirection spots to protect him from that. Finally, when he gave a guy one slam for the first time, the place went absolutely ballistic, man.
And he put his hands like they were magic, and he put them over. Yeah, it was an accident. Superman is the way.
Well, it was because he had Grape Drink we had him with the hardcore hood black guys, the Grape Drink connection, and their Grape Drink was like Popeye spinach. But we had conditioned the audience to these different worlds of like believability. And then when they came together in the scene, in the third beat of the improv scene, where the Venn diagram meets, when Lumpy takes the Grape Drink and hulks up, they believe it. And then the one slam happens, his first offense, and the place went nuts. To me, that was one of the most, because I remember Rip going, "God damn, boys, I never seen nothing like that before." And you and I were standing there in Gorilla, and that is carved into my, like, I don't care. They can never take that away from me. Andy Dufresne, fucking in my creative mind, and to share that moment with you, that's one of the things I'm most proud of in my creative career. That moment, dude, of really bringing improv to OVW, and you and I kind of getting it to the highest point of the greenest talent in a great moment that way. But nobody else could sell tickets because they all bought them from Lumpy. I knew that shit was over, at that time.
And Grape Drink, if you remember those guys, like it was, they collaborate with us. And that's, I think, what we did well was we would speak to the guy. We didn't force any kind of gimmick on someone, like, was that a stereotypical gimmick? Yes, to a degree. But in the same time, it was something they embraced and wanted. And I can remember Adonis, when we first introduced it, crawling towards the Grape Drink in his match. And then out came, remind me, I forget his tag partner's working name.
Rough Rider Rashawn, Triple M.
Yeah, he came out to give, to push the Grape Drink to him, and then he drank it, and then he hulked up in that moment, and we gave birth to Grape Drink Connection. And then those guys could take their Grape Drink, and anybody that they collaborated with, it was able to give them powers in that moment. And so Lumpy Magoo being the very awkward, nerdy white guy, and then being paired with those guys who were able to really portray like some legit tough guys from the hood, and them working together, I think, was one of those moments where, like, we have social issues now where there's a lot of teams, and are you left, are you right, Democrat, Republican, and there's supremacists and all sorts of different racial issues going on. That was a time when everyone was able to embrace each other, I think, and just the audience appreciated that. They wanted that. I think people still want that, and we got to find a way to give that, where people can take different worlds, they come together, and they work.
And it worked, man. The dudes who would never hang out, who people had love for both babyface wise, and a strange thing. And I agree, that's where wrestling was the most beautiful, because it cuts through all of those lines. We may play stereotypes, but eventually the story can drive the human aspect of together. I think we accomplished that. Was there any other time when where I'm not there putting myself over, that it was like, wow, I know that big show at 4th Street and things like that have been very interesting. What else to you sticks out as a real milestone in your years, man?
I think it's with working with other companies. Well, we did work with Ring of Honor, and so that gave us opportunities to wrestle for another company in front of a different audience that wanted to see a different kind of wrestling. We worked with Impact, and to some degree, we still do. 4th Street, all the things really current in my mind is, the past year or two, because when you're here nonstop, I haven't really taken any breaks. It kind of blurs together. So whenever I see someone, they say, "Oh, I haven't been here since 2012," and I'm like, "Man, it's been that long." It feels like it was just a couple of years ago or whatever.
Right.
I think the milestones to me now are how can we get bigger houses, bigger outlets, and I think in a lot of ways OVW's done that. We've got new TV deals where we are, in my mind, these are the bigger TV deals than you could get for even like streaming. We're on local channels of CBS, ABC, Fox News. I believe it's Bowling Green, where SmackDown is a lead-in for our show on their, going into on Fox, their channel for Fox. So that's a huge opportunity where you're able to get your product out in front of the audience that you actually travel in front of. So like if you stream your show and say people in Oregon watch it, or there's a pocket of people in California, that's great. But being able to be on a Fox or a CBS affiliate where you're actually touring is so important for an independent company that tours as much as we do to try to get your product in front of the people that you're directly traveling and selling tickets to. So
and you can do business on the road then as well. That offers that opportunity.
Yeah, and previously it's been nice where you were able to travel to outside your territory because you could experiment. You could take guys that were heels, make them baby faces. Audience didn't necessarily know that you were doing that differently. But I also enjoy the fact that we're able to bring our product to somebody and they already know who the champion is. They're anticipating someone being there. So that's really awesome. I think that one of the things that, since you haven't been here, that was really fun was my experience with the Tag Buddies. This was before anyone could filter me. There was periods of time where I ran the show exclusively, so you couldn't stop me. And I decided that I met a guy. His name's Stu Perry. He works as a pastor of disaster, and we've evolved his character. But he is a legitimate preacher. He preaches. He's a Christian, and as you know, I'm an atheist legitimately. Yeah. So backstage, he and I would have very. I
think you're an illegitimate atheist, like you're praying in private, and I'm going to catch you. Is that what means?
I legitimately sleep in on Sundays, like that's what you're doing. But he and I would have very spirited conversations, if I could say that. Like we would ride together, and we enjoyed each other's company. Not conversations in ways where we argued, although we would at times gather a crowd in the locker room who wanted to, hear us. But he is a guy that we decided, well, we're going to put this into action. So I took my atheist character and put it on television. And there were things that maybe I shouldn't have done that crossed the line to some degree.
Bro, I've been cutting off the national anthem with my entrance music. I don't
that. But, I would rant the things that I truly felt, and then amp it up by a few levels for the show itself. But where I would criticize religion and he would stand up for it. And I just remember that he and I were
you taking from Christopher Hitchens? Were you like watching a lot of Hitchens and taking from that, or no?
No, I enjoy Hitchens, but I didn't need him. I was completely loaded at that time.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I remember my first promo. I held the Bible up and I said, "This is a crutch, and crutches are for weak people." And like, I just know that was something that another good friend of mine, Gilbert, told me I should not have done. But
that's awesome, bro. I love the Gilbert too, but dude, that's good. We're keeping that.
And then I would drive that point home, and it became so consistent that when I walked to the ring, there were groups of people who closed their eyes and held their hands up, and they would pray. while I talked on the microphone. And these were not plants. These were 7, 8, 9, 10 people that would do that. And Stu, pastor of disaster, the good guy, would come out, and we of course he was trying to be patient with me in pre-tapes and things like that, and I would argue, and I hated him, and we ended up having a tag team or a battle royal where the last 2 in would end up getting the tag team title shot. And so the battle royal, he and I were in a heated feud. We're just going at it. We ended up doing a double knockout in the middle of the ring, and just as we had done that, we were in the final 4. The other 2 guys double eliminated over the top rope. So as we came to and the bell was ringing, we realized that we too had been paired together to be in a tag team title match. And of course, he raised his hands to glorify God. And then in that moment, I fell to my knees, realizing I was having to tag with this guy. And it was just such a symbolic moment.
Love it.
Of an odd couple that got paired together. Of course, I wanted nothing to do with it, and he loved the idea of trying to, God was giving him an opportunity to bring me to Christ. And so we played that up every opportunity we had. And, we were asked in an interview what our tag team was, and I didn't even want to acknowledge us as a tag team. And he had the G-rated goofy name of, we're the tag team buddies, the tag buddies. And of course, to my chagrin, whenever one of us was on the cell, the audience would chant "Tag Buddies," and the Tag Buddies were a great opportunity that eventually my rigid, angry, mean atheist character sort of grew to like this Christian who was everlasting patient with me, and that was something that I thought was really awesome. And
again, two groups that are mismatched or diametrically opposed, finding a common ground after going to battle to put their own moral code over on each other, man. And where is the common ground? That's what people are really looking for.
Yeah, and it's real, and it's something that people deal with. I think atheism scares a lot of Christians. They don't really interact with atheists, and I think a lot of atheists treat Christians like they're idiots because we don't really interact with them on that level of what their belief system is. But Stu is a guy. It's not that I need to be shown. Like, I got a lot of family that's Christian, so I just tolerate it or whatever. But Stu is a guy that really showed me that you can be friends. You can have a lot of things in common, and religion doesn't have to be one of them. And we were able to take that and show that to the audience. And so, you took a guy like me who's a career heel, and then you kept me heel. Nothing about my character was suddenly invalidated, but I was able to be that odd couple baby face that people could get behind. And I think people they really enjoyed that kind of angle.
Yeah, what you're not telling them is how sick with wrestling you are. Like, your mind is destroyed because you had a whole federation that you wanted to run a tent revival show where you tell the stories of the Bible, and you probably have notebooks where it's all mapped out just because that's the type of brilliant mind where you're gonna come in and the equation is gonna be solved on the fucking chalkboard. Poz, get him, man. You hit him with something as we start to take it back here.
The developmental system, the contracted guys, non-contracted guys. I always find that so interesting because you guys are technically working together. Is there animosity there? Is there any sort of heat there? Because these guys are getting paid to be trained. You guys and some of the other guys like Man Beast, they're not, but they might be better than the guys that are getting paid to be trained. Is that
not might be?
Well, most likely are. What's like the thought process there from the guys on like your side of the camp?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily put myself over on those guys and say I'm that much better. Wrestling is so much more than talent. Wrestling is first and foremost, it's an image. So there's a body element to it. You have to be, we were there, yes, and we were working our butts off. But the truth is that those guys that were under contract were 6'4", 260 pounds, super jacked. I don't think that they were worried that this 6 foot, 210 pound white guy was going to come in looking like I look like generic wrestler A on some levels, like I had to dress myself up as a redneck or as a character in that way to kind of get some notice. These guys, they weren't threatened by us. Truthfully, the way it worked was we were just happy to get a spot on the card, even if it meant that you were in a pre-dark match and Kozlov was making your head touch your feet the wrong way. Which he called spring break. When he said, "I'm putting you in spring break," and everyone laughed, you were like, wonder what this is. That was a dark match. And, those opportunities came and you were just glad to get suplexed around the ring and trying to get noticed and that. So there was competition in the sense of trying to get a spot, but not necessarily trying to take their spot. And I don't think those guys were threatened. They kind of liked us, and I think they appreciated our drive and our desire. And I'd also say at that time, like the women's division in WWE that was in OVW was about 20 women deep. Like it was a lot of women. So you could see how they would each other would at times be competitive, or you would see guys who were tag teams that were contracted. Those guys they would resent each other maybe, but to us, to the non-contract guys, we were kind of like their little brothers and sisters, and they always treated me with respect, I would say,
They would come show up to DCW and be excited, and what we would do in Derby City Wrestling was take the details from TV that Mercury, Conway, and Roadkill were working on, Dinsmore, and if we could find a way to flush out a character and have a sub storyline that would do it, sometimes that storyline would come down to DCW, get played out, and it would make its way back to OVW TV again. So Power and I were like always looking for those types of opportunities. How can we flush this out and get this, that, and the other to create these more worlds that might intersect up here? And eventually they would for continuity. It was awesome. But if you wanted to fuck it up for everybody, you would go during Six Flags and eat. Like, I know I never would we do this, but eat before the contract guys, you're dead in the water. Like that was a bridge too far right there. Contract guys got to eat catering first, and we'd be over there fucking waiting to see what was left over, man.
Yeah, it was way more serious there than it was like at WWE, because the rumor was if you did that at WWE, you got tremendous heat. So I think that a lot of people believed that far more than it was true. So that to the point where when we would go visit WWE, we were scared to eat catering at all. But my interaction with those guys there when I was an extra was, we don't care. There's so much food. Just go eat. No one cares. So sometimes we would take some things way too far, way too seriously. And speaking to the point of taking something from OVW's main TV and then putting it on Derby City Wrestling, we didn't know where OVW was going. We weren't really part of that committee. So we would just see it and then try to create a little nuance or a tweak that didn't go too far, because you couldn't go too far with it either. You just wanted to develop it enough that it wasn't a rehash, but took it a step without too far, So those were important intellectual exercises of knowing your boundaries when you're creating content, as well as treading certain lines very, very safely,
And these are the 1 to 3 in the morning sessions, like 2-3 days a week.
Don't hit twinkle toes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, right. Some of my favorite times, though, man. And now you're a dad and doing, great work, being, the gatekeeper of the business and making sure things are being taught the right way. I love it. How many go to one of our PW 101 conversations here, Poz? Power, how many are you still setting up the ring, and how many rings have you set up in your lifetime?
I'm still setting up the ring. I did it on Monday. We had a fair show, and when you got to help, you jump in. Like you're jumping around the place. You got to make sure audio is set up. You got to set up the ring with the boys. I like to set it up, even though I probably could just stand on the side. I like to set it up because it creates a little bit more connection between the office and the locker room. So how many rings have I set up? Oh Lord, I don't know. Thousands.
And you could be a record holder, man. There's no doubt about it. And you should definitely be a top pick for her OVW Hall of Fame, as far as I'm concerned, man. I thank you for being a good friend and a brilliant writing partner, dude. Very inspirational. Poz, what do you got for him?
Just with OVW today, I know Matt Jones is now a part of the ownership. Like, what's the next step for OVW, kind of even more so building? I know Fox affiliates and stuff like that, but how do you build the brand even more? How do you keep growing OVW?
Well, I think first you have to capitalize on these affiliates. You put the product out there, you let it kind of marinate or cook on the audience for a little bit, and then you try to deliver live events maybe 2-3 times a year that can build houses that are stronger. We're doing pay-per-views that we've been giving a lot of free pay-per-views away so that people can get a taste of the new product. And you want to build that base. Pay-per-view it's to me, it's about revenue. You want to be able to bring in revenue on pay-per-view. You want to bring in revenue with advertisers, and then expand after that. So once you've really grown, for instance, we're in the Kentucky area, obviously, so we're growing that as much as possible. Once you've done that, then you want to start to branch out, like West Virginia, move into Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. Those are options. So to me, it's just about expanding your reach slowly and then growing that so that you can go a little bit wider, I guess. I'm a big fan of fair shows and bought shows, so I like the more of those, the better, and just income. Like at the end of the day, you want to make money, and so there's two elements to the wrestling business. There's the art of it, and there's the business of it, and it's beautiful when both of those come together. And art without the business is just you going broke. And the business without art is, that's only going to last for so long. So you want to make sure those two things are constantly intertwined as much as possible.
What did I tell you, Poz? What did I tell you about this guy?
Genius mind for the wrestling business.
He's like a wrestling computer, bro. He's like everyone who in our clique who are friends, we just laugh about him because he's probably some shit from the future, some alien technology that's actually sent back here, because he's not a normal human being. There's no doubt about that, man.
Susie, I would say I was a robot. 1101 is how I treat them.
Oh, dude, man. Great stuff. Thank you. We'd love to have you back for more talks on developmental as we, zero in on some specific things, because we could go on for hours, not just recounting careers and creative, but how you break it down from the business aspect and the creative power. I'd love to have you on for some more, man. So hopefully you'll join us again. I'll reach out for sure.
Yeah, this was awesome. I haven't done I do about one podcast a year, so I might have to make it 2 this year.
Awesome. And what would you like to hear more about on developmental? I mean, we got to get to Dirty South people. We're going to get to Doc and Rip and other people. What would you like to hear on future shows?
If you get a promoter on, I'd like to hear how they make money. Every time we get together, it's as far as a creative group, it's how is this going to sell tickets? How is this good business? So that's the thing I like to hear. I like to hear how promoters make money, whether it's sponsorships or ticket sales or whatever it is that they do to bring in income. Because, like I said, art and business have to intertwine. You need.
It's tough. It's tough with. OVW might be one of the few that actually is about making the money, because DSW, I don't think they were drawing big houses, and I know FCW and NXT are a loss leader every year, so they're just expecting to take that as a loss to get the product that they want to. So when it comes to making money, that you guys may have that foremost in your mind more than anything.
Oh yeah, and I didn't know that about NXT, and they're the loss leader or whatever you say.
I think it's like $20 million a year they lose on NXT and FCW, and the deal was with. Because you were there when Kern and came in with Ace, and they took 360 pictures of OVW. Triple H goes, OVW is always going to be with WWE. 6 weeks later, see ya. But FCW was because Kern and Ace put up the money to run it and take the warehouse space and all that type of shit, where now NXT is completely owned by WWE with the Performance Center. But that was, they started at $250,000 under just in getting the place set up. So were they drawing mega houses at FCW that was making that money? I don't think so. I don't think they were. So,
well, I imagine the WWE probably views NXT as that loss is somehow beneficial somewhere else down the line for them. But you're right. When all you have is this one company, it's got to be profitable, or you're going away. Or you're bleeding someone.
Yeah,
people can only bleed so much.
Yep. Yeah, but Danny was smart enough to have the library to cash in and retire.
Yeah, and those are things that can be monetized too. Like the library we've built up since then could also be monetized, where you're able to put it on as a classic, and just content. I know AEW has 3 different shows, and it looks to me like they're building up a library that they'll be able to deliver on some other platform or what have you.
That's a great point. I'm guilty of that. not shitting on Evolution and Dark or whatever, but from that point of view, that perspective alone, and we can do a whole other show on libraries. That's a great idea of how to build one, because who cares as long as their matches, who cares if the matches suck? We're getting ownership of it because 5 years from now they could be a star. So let's just get these shows to build a library to add to it. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Content
is king, man. Well, Power, I appreciate you, buddy. I'll definitely get a hold of you. Hopefully you have an awesome summer, man. And hopefully, with all the restrictions lifting, your houses are double and triple and people just want to get back out there, dude. I know you got the product to feed them.
Yeah, they're coming back. So we'll be glad to feed them all we can.
Awesome.
Any plugs you want to throw out there, Adam?
Oh, yeah. Watch us at ovwrestling.com. That's it.
Easy to get to, guys. If you want him on your show, just hit us up. He needs to be heard. That's what kills me, man, is you're still one of the best kept secrets and the most brilliant minds on the planet when it comes to this shit, dude. So let's get it going. Let's get exposure. JP, anything else, pal?
No, that is it. Let's wrap it up. Go to the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check out the website, tmptempire.com. Of course, patreon.com/tmptempire. Ben, what do you got?
Patreon.com/Hamin Media Group. You guys know where it is. Shows are still free up there. Also, go to Russo's Brand and patreon.com/RussoTWC. Had an awesome episode of Master Shoot Theater this week with a huge run-in from Jason Sensation, doing all of your favorite Attitude Era voices. It was a great improvisation. Power, I got to send you the kayfabe links on these two. They're now animating the master shoots that we do, and it's hilarious, man. So appreciate everybody on staff. Great week with beautiful people getting retweeted by Jack Prosobic. Had over 35,000 views in about 25 or 24 hours. So we're trying to build these relationships and partnerships to show how great the content is with HMG Brand Management. So anybody who's a Patreon subscriber, just want to say thank you and appreciate you. Ben Hamin YouTube channel, Infidels, twitch.tv/Hamin Media for the SmackDown Live self-help group watch along. But it's 2Man Power Trip, HMG, and Adam Revolver from OVW. YOLO!